All right, we're going to review Saints Falcons Week 1. Jameis Winston versus Marcus Mariota. Right, I mean, whenever these two were coming out of college, first pick, second pick, this is exactly what we thought would happen. One in New Orleans, one in Atlanta. Neither one very good. Let's go ahead and check out the box score and talk about some things that happened in the game. Obviously, it was tuned into every snap, every second of this game. The first half was brutal from New Orleans, and it was brutal from Jameis Winston. Everything that we feared, and by we, I mean me, everything I feared going into this seemingly came true. Jameis Winston was timid. He was overthinking things. He was holding onto the ball. There was nothing happening. Nothing was happening offensively at all. And this is the biggest thing with Jameis to me. And it's going to sound like I'm really, really harping on Jameis here, even though if you just look at the box score, everything looks okay, right? If you just look at the final numbers, everything looks okay. But I think we all know that wasn't the case. My biggest issue with Jameis is that it seems to be a tale of two Jameses. Jameis? The first tale is the Jameis we know and love. The gunslinger, 30 interceptions, 16 fumbles, 5,000 yards, that Jameis, right? The second one is this Jameis Winston cosplaying as Drew Brees. I really, really respect Jameis Winston taking this seriously and taking a year under Drew Brees seriously, where, you know, he has changed. He obviously has changed. But I think a lot of the times in the game, he seems to know that. He seems to be dropping back, and he knows he's changing. He knows when he drops back, he's saying, like, oh, throw it here. But then he seemingly thinks, oh, that's what old Jameis would have done. Maybe I should look somewhere else. Or he snaps it and says, all right, now Drew would do this, this, and this. Let me do this, this, and this. And next thing you know, he's holding the ball for too long. He's getting hit. He's pump faking. He's 2 seconds behind the play. He's throwing balls behind people. I mean, that's not going to cut it. That gave us the 110 yards per game Jameis. The Saints defense is good enough to win games with 110 yards passing and all that stuff. It's not good enough to win a Super Bowl. I mean, it's not going to work. That can get you 8-9, 9-8. It can get you there, right? What I want to see is a merger of the two. I want to see Jameis slinging the ball. I want to see us pushing the ball downfield. I want to see us being dynamic, okay? I want to see us pushing the offense, just like we did in early Drew Brees, or even mid Drew Brees, where the Saints were one of the most, maybe the most exciting team in the NFL. And they were the team that was going to be on Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football. It was going to be overs. It was going to be 600 yards of total offense. That's what I want. And I'm okay with Jameis turning the ball over some. I'm okay with that gunslinger mentality. I'm pretty sure Matthew Stafford led the league in interceptions last year. He's a bit of a gunslinger. Brett Favre, gunslinger. I'm okay with Jameis at that level. I'm not okay with 30 interceptions. I think that was kind of an anomaly. I'm not okay with 16 fumbles. If he can cut that in half with some tutelage, some growth, better, a better team around him, it seems like he's maturing. If he can cut that in half and give me a merger of the two, that's what I want. That's what the Saints need. That's the only way the Saints are going to be a legitimate contender in the NFC. In the fourth quarter, Jameis was incredible. And I tweeted and I said, Dennis Allen has to let Jameis throw. And Jameis has to throw. This is at halftime whenever Jameis had 18 yards passing. I tweeted and I said, Jameis has to start spreading the ball out. Just go back to that playground kind of mentality where there are so many weapons. The Saints now, it's kind of crazy the flip that the Saints have done. Last year, the Saints had no weapons. They had no one. This year, they have all the weapons. They have Taysom. They have Kamara. They have Ingram. They have Landry. They have Thomas. They have Olave. I mean, they have a plethora of people to go to. What we should not be doing is having a conservative offense that's afraid to take risks. Jameis got away from the Drew Brees cosplay after the first half. He started to really spread it around. He started to really make plays, and he was incredible. And he was really good. And him and Michael Thomas were a big reason why the Saints were able to make a comeback. There was a lot of other things going on, but the second half, Jameis, if we get that second half, Jameis, there's no doubt in my mind that the Saints can make a real run at the NFC, because I don't think the NFC is very good. So I'm looking for way more of that moving forward. And Tampa's a tough test, but we'll see. I want to talk about Taysom Hill a little bit. Taysom Hill was super dynamic. Taysom Hill was doing what he did a lot 2 years ago, where the game is dead, the game is dying, and Taysom comes in, or Taysom gets a touch or something, and it's unbelievable. And it changes the entire pace of the game. It changes everything. It kind of breaks the defense. It opens up the offense. It adds a wrinkle to everything. That is where Taysom Hill is so good. That is who Taysom Hill should be. I'm not sure how it went from that to potentially he's a starting quarterback, potentially to where he should touch the ball every possession. That shouldn't be the case. He had 4 carries, 1 reception, 1 target, and that's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. You could even bump up the carries a little bit or bump up the receptions. He had 5 total in this game. If he's around that 8 combo, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with him being involved 8-ish times. That's where Taysom should be. You know, some of them are rollouts, some of them are he's a tight end, some he's running the ball, whatever. But this is just more evidence that Taysom Hill is incredible as an emergency weapon, a super dynamic injection into the offense. It's crazy. I heard people on Twitter immediately after saying, you know, can Taysom work his way back into the quarterback role? And it just blows my mind how wrong people are looking at that, right? People are looking at that so wrong, where just because he's good in bursts doesn't mean he should be handling the ball every single snap. That takes away from how dynamic he is. That takes away from what he can do. If he's always under center, then the defense doesn't have to account for him lining up in the slot. The defense doesn't have to account for him in the backfield. The defense doesn't have to account for him in motion with Kamara in the background, Jameis at quarterback. You know, like utilizing him in one role is the worst way to use Taysom Hill. But I think Taysom had a great game. Kamara's usage was concerning. I do have Kamara in a huge fantasy league, so that sucked. But it's also concerning moving forward, because if Kamara is, and I know he was hurt, I know he got hurt, he was dealing with a rib issue, and Latavius Murray was signed to the practice squad today, I believe, so that issue may linger. But where I want to see Kamara is depends on the sentence is where I'll toss out the Kamara or Kamara. I feel like everyone in the city says it different. But what concerns me about him is whenever he gets away from the passing game. He's another player that I would love to see all over the field. I would love to see him in the slot. I would love to see him out wide. I would love to see him and Ingram on the field at the same time. You know, if Taysom's in the backfield, Kamara's out wide, things like that. I mean, the Saints have so much creativity possible on offense. Now, granted, I don't know if Dennis Allen is the guy to do it, but the Saints can be super creative, and I hope they are. I mean, Kamara ended up with 9 carries with 39 yards, 4.3 average with 15 yards was his long. He was targeted 4 times, 3 receptions for 7 yards, which is pretty bad. That's including a 15-yarder. So he needs to bump that up. And again, he got hurt. He hurt his ribs, so it's hard to. You can't really take this as one full thing here. On the Atlanta front, I thought Atlanta actually looked pretty good. I don't like Arthur Smith as a coach. I'm kind of down on Arthur. I thought Mariota was pretty good for what it is. You know, he's a bridge quarterback. We talked about this in our quarterback ranking video. Mariota is not there to take Atlanta to the Super Bowl. Atlanta knows that. Arthur Smith knows that. Marcus Mariota knows that. He is there to keep them competitive until Desmond Ritter's ready. I mean, I guess they have their guy. So until Ritter's ready, Mariota's there to tutor him, to be good, to keep them competitive, and to win games. Like to win some games, not blow games. And that's about it. And I think he did that pretty well. He was super dynamic on the ground. I loved the way they were using him with the read options and on the ground. Cordero Patterson is really good. Warning, especially if you have him in fantasy. He was really good last year, too, at the beginning of the year, and then he faded. I think there was talk that he was not prepared for a full season at running back, and that's why he faded last year. And there was talk this year they were going to scale back his rushes dramatically to save him, to save his legs. And to, instead of having 25 rushes, they were going to have him have 10 rushes and, be more of a dynamic player at wideout. That wasn't the case. He had 22 rushes here, was targeted 5 times, had 3 catches. I mean, he ran for a 5.5-yard clip, but I would just preface this, or as my friend Ryan would say, preface that. More than likely, if you have Cordero Patterson in a fantasy league, I would not count on this kind of productivity. His legs have in the past shown that he cannot do that. I think it is worth noting, I think Atlanta was in that mix of Atlanta, Chicago, Seattle as your real bottom 3. Those were the teams that everyone thought potentially could be the worst teams in the NFL. I think you can safely take Atlanta out of there. From the first week I watched, I think Chicago, even though they won, I think it's Chicago and the Jets, I think, are the 2 teams you're going to look at for that. Atlanta has enough playmakers. They have enough happening. They have enough of a wrinkle with Mariota. I mean, if you watch Mariota and you watch Justin Fields, or if you watch Mariota and you watch Joe Flacco, there's a legitimate difference. There's a legitimate level there. If you watch Cordero Patterson is the most dynamic player on, if you combined Atlanta, Chicago, and New York, the Jets. If you combine those teams, and maybe even Seattle, Seattle has DK Metcalf, but certainly out of Chicago, the Jets, and Atlanta, Cordero Patterson is the best player on all 3 teams' rosters. So I think we can take Atlanta out of the worst team in the NFL conversation, and it's probably just between Chicago and the Jets. There are 2 things I want to talk about with this game. We're going to pull up some clips here. There was some serious concern from me with the last possession with the Saints. All right, so here's the final drive of the game. I'm not going to play the audio, but all right. So right now it's 1st and 10. The Saints have the ball on the 20, 24-26, 48 seconds left. The Saints have no timeouts. Okay, so Jameis is operating quickly here. Jameis is, we're in a spike situation where he's got to be cognizant of the clock. He's trying to get to field goal range. Let's rock and roll. See what happens. 1st down, long pass to Olave, who goes out of bounds. Oh no, this is Jarvis Landry. Excuse me. Jarvis Landry goes out of bounds. All right, so 2nd down, Jameis runs up and spikes it. Okay. The flags are thrown as intentional grounding. It's intentional grounding because the clock was stopped. So if you think about it, I saw a lot of people on Twitter confused about this as well. If you think about it, with the clock being stopped, this is just a passing play, right? And on a passing play, how does intentional grounding work? You have to be outside the tackle box. The ball has to go to the line of scrimmage. And there has to be receivers in the area, or it's intentional grounding. Jameis was not out of the tackle box. Jameis was, the ball did not get past the line of scrimmage. So it's obvious why it would be intentional grounding. Now, this is where we're going to miss Sean Payton a lot. And this is where I hoped Jameis Winston would be better. I hoped Jameis Winston would be better at this kind of game management, clock management after some Drew Brees tutelage. Jameis obviously did not know that Jarvis Landry was out of bounds. I know it's easy for me to sit here and say, how can you not know? Because how can you not see the clock is running? How can you not understand all those things? How are you not communicating this? How are you not ingesting this information? First game, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, but this is so bad, right? Backs him up, loses the down. It's just the worst possible thing that could have happened in this situation. So he spikes it, flags are thrown, no one knows why, no one knows what's happening. Intentional grounding. All right. It's just such a mess. I mean, it really is such a mess right here. So then it's 2nd and 20, right? So it's 2nd and 20. Jameis drops back, boom, gets back into field goal range. All right, so he completes a pass that is probably about 16 yards or so, not to the first down. So it's coming up on 3rd and blank, right? Let's pretend we don't know yet. It's 3rd and blank. 30 seconds, we'll let it run. So pass completed to the tight end. 3rd and 4, 25 seconds left. We are in field goal range, okay? When he gets to the ball, so he gets up, 24 seconds is on the play clock, or is on the game clock. 33 seconds on the play clock. There is no reason to spike this ball. There is no reason to spike this ball right here. Okay? If you are content with just kicking it, if you're content with just, you know what, let's just go ahead and kick it, who cares? Why wouldn't you wait? Why wouldn't you wait to spike the ball? Let's say Atlanta, which is what they would do, but let's say Atlanta blows a timeout. You at least get them to waste one of their timeouts. You can't come up to the line and spike this. This is back-to-back plays where Jameis or Dennis Allen, whoever, is completely mismanaging the end of this game. The Saints should have lost at the end of the game. The field goal, Atlanta got into a situation where they could have kicked a field goal. They got into that situation. But the only reason they were allowed to get in that situation is because of game management like this. We saw that all weekend throughout all kind of games. But how this right here happened, and I'm not saying that Atlanta would have allowed the clock to die, because they wouldn't have. Atlanta would have called a timeout. But just that chess match of, okay, well, at least that's a timeout that they cannot use, right? It's a timeout that they cannot use. And let's say they call a timeout. Then you have a dead clock on 3rd and 4. So then you can turn around and say, well, let's just do the play. We have 24 seconds. So if Atlanta blows a timeout, then you have 24 seconds, 3rd and 4. You can do an out route. You can do whatever you want. You can run the ball, because you couldn't run the ball, but you could try to throw. You could throw to the sidelines. You could do. There's possibilities if you wanted it. You have a down, right? So even if they blow a timeout, you're sitting there at 3rd and 4. You can get more yards. You can do a quick throw, whatever. But this is terrible right here. I mean, this is 101, really. It's 101, and Jameis and the team gets up and they spike it immediately. So they're completely punting 3rd down. They're content with this. They're content with this position and this spot, and they're content with leaving 23 seconds for the Falcons if they make the field goal. And the argument for, like, well, maybe they were leaving clock for if they missed the field goal, maybe they were leaving some clock. Well, that's not the case, because they didn't have a timeout. So if the possession flips, Atlanta just kneels it out. Saints can't do anything. So so he spikes it, and obviously Big Nuts Lutz on a 51-yard field goal makes it. But this last possession was just so bad. And I feel like it gets lost because of the result. It gets lost because they won the game, incredible comeback, and all that. Everyone's happy. But this is a huge concern. This is a huge concern that in a pivotal situation like this, a divisional game, that back-to-back plays like this are just complete F minuses. Not even like questionable, just straight up F minuses. This is the NFL. This is the best of the best. This is a veteran coach in Dennis Allen. This is a veteran quarterback at this point. Maybe not even veteran, but this is a quarterback who's been in the league. This isn't his first start. This isn't a guy coming. This isn't Trey Lance, a guy coming from FCS, hasn't played in a long time, and now getting his first reps week 1 of the season with the jitters or whatever. This is Jameis Winston. He's been around. He sat for a year. He watched, in my opinion, the second best quarterback to ever play the game. He got a piece of the action last year. He's been with this team for a few years. Whole off season is number 1. This spot right here, the spike is one thing, because I'm okay with chalking the spike up to, maybe he thought the clock was running. I'm okay with chalking that up to the game. But the third down makes absolutely zero sense to me. The third down, I just don't get. Because 2 things can happen. You can either, if you're Dennis Allen, or Jameis Winston, I guess, you have 25 seconds. You can either run a play and you risk turning the ball over. Depending on the play, I suppose you risk not being able to get to the field goal. But with 25 seconds, I would assume that they can make this happen. But let's just play it as conservative as possible. Let's play it as conservative as possible. We are all okay with spiking the ball and kicking a 51-yard field goal. You still have to make Atlanta burn that timeout. So even if we all agree that the decision to either kick it or to punt it, to punt your third down, that the decision to kick it right there, the 51, if we all agree that's the right decision, that's 100% correct. We don't want to advance. We don't want to attempt to advance. We don't want to attempt throwing the ball to the sidelines. We don't want to do any of that. Even if we're okay with that, you cannot spike it here. And this play has stuck with me all week. And I have not heard enough people talking about this play. And maybe I'm making a big deal out of this, but the game management in the NFL right now from coaches is as bad as it's ever seen. It really is. And hopefully this was just a whoopsie poopsie, and this is not how the game is going to go. The Saints have Tampa in the Dome Sunday, high noon. And, what a drink. High noon in the Dome. I will be there. I can't wait. We'll do a preview of the game before the video that'll be dropping before that game with just some thoughts and how the 2 teams scheme up against each other. Tough spot, really tough spot. The Saints do play the Bucs well, so we'll see, but we'll talk more about that in a future video. But that has been this breakdown of the game. Just my initial thoughts. It's only 1 week. It's hard to drive a lot of data or a lot of talking points from 1 week. Very sloppy first half, very good second half. Hellaciously bad, poorly managed last drive that turned out really good. So it's crazy how that works out. But that is going to be the review of this game. 1-0 in the division. Huge game in Tampa coming up. Thank you for watching this. Subscribe, like. We're going to start pumping out content left and right. We are, dare I say, we are back.